It's quite easy to get used to as well. The no load shedding, the feeling of being safe. And I mean, can I tell you that yesterday I left my phone in a public bathroom, and I thought for about half an hour that it had been stolen, but it actually had been handed in, and I got it back. So,
Wow.
and like, these are the things that you start to get used to here. And then I think the thought of, then I talked to my mom on the phone, and she's telling me about how they still haven't been able to repair any of the damage to KwaZulu-Natal after the floods in April. And then you think, oh, actually, you are really lucky to live here, and would you want to go back? Not.
I'm Dr. CHAMONIX Blanche, ex-corporate and academical turned CEO and board member of several companies, and mother of 4 little extraordinary kids. But it wasn't that long ago that I lacked the confidence, the know-how, and the time to focus on designing and really going after the life that I so wanted to live. A life of freedom, of fairness, and of being fair dinkum to who I really was and what I wanted to get out of this fleeting time that we have on Mother Earth. Fast forward to many lessons learned and moving halfway around the world to the most amazing country, you'll see the life that I now live. One that gives me more safety and freedom than I ever thought would be possible, and that really only existed as a daydream while I was living in South Africa. I created CHAMONIX TV to give you true spot advice on how you can also live a life in this amazing country, and so that you can see how another couple like us now live in Australia with 4 little kids here in Down Under. And I'll be providing you with step-by-step strategies so that you can make your Aussie dream a reality too. If you're a keen future Aussie who's looking to create a life that excites you and offers you safety, freedom, and opportunity, you have come to the right place, my friend. Welcome aboard.
Before we continue with the episode, I just quickly wanted to hop in here to let you know that Migration Made Easy, our signature and sought-after course, will be closing its doors very soon in the next few days. If you want to be part of the most comprehensive program, we will help you plan, apply for, and make the move to Australia as soon as possible, where we maximize your chances of actually making it over without struggling to know where to start, how to land that perfect job, and just what to do to come here. You need to be in on Migration Made Easy. We won't be opening the doors again for months. So if you want to be taken from zero to a migration hero, hop onto chamonixtv.com.au/now and make sure that you get in as soon as possible. All right, my friend, let's hop into the episode. Hi, Candace. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. We can see that you're in Melbourne because you're a little bit more warmed up than me, and I'm like, oh, it's been a nice sunny day. How long have you been in Melbourne for?
I have lived here for almost 8 years.
Okay, and was that straight from South Africa?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to say fresh off the boat, straight into the cold. Where in South Africa are you from?
So I lived in Cape Town for most of my adult life. And actually, the one good thing about Melbourne is that it's actually really similar to Cape Town in a lot of ways. There's sort of culturally and even weather-wise, it's just a bit colder and a bit hotter. It's like the two, slightly.
Both sides.
Both, yeah.
The extremes. Oh, but the nice thing about having extreme weathers and different seasons is that you get to dress all different ways during the year. So that makes your cupboard interesting. I hope you've got a big wardrobe.
It's okay. It could be bigger probably, but yes, I do have a range of jackets actually. I think when you live in Melbourne, you need, jackets for warmth and jackets for rain. Can't really have two, but you need this sort of, both.
Yes, very, very true. And boots. Oh, I'm a boot girl.
Boots. I was actually just looking at buying like rain boots recently because we've had so much rain. I was like, I probably need some wellies.
Oh, yes, good plan. And they can be so fashionable these days. They're long
Yes,
gone, not just the ugly black or whatever the original color was. They're like,
yes,
ooh,
exactly.
fancy. It's
Yeah,
almost like Crocs. Crocs used to be just almost like a functional thing, and now it's like a shoe that's, it's got some attitude.
yeah, it's true, it's true.
All right, Candice, so please tell me about your journey to Australia. 8 years ago, you say, and what
Yes.
made you come to this country?
Well, it's a very funny story, actually. In 2012, I came over for a conference with some friends of mine, and I actually met my now husband at that conference, and he is an Australian who is living in Melbourne. And, we hit it off, and then we had this long distance relationship for 2 years where I was in Cape Town and he was in Melbourne, and we would visit each other. And then we were eventually we're just like, okay, we've got to just live together somewhere. And Australia just seemed like, such a good opportunity because I had a daughter, and, it just seemed like a really good idea to come over. So we did. And it wasn't as straightforward as that, obviously, having a daughter and, needing to bring her across without her dad and his family and that kind of thing. But yes, we made it happen.
That's awesome. So, did you come on a partner visa then?
Yes, I did.
And are you an Aussie citizen now?
I am. I just became one, actually. Very exciting. Thank you. We still have to do the ceremony. We're waiting for that part, but we've gotten the official letters, and we're fair dinkum.
Oh, very Aussie. Well done, well done. You've definitely brushed up on your English that you need to learn before you go for your citizenship test.
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about your settling in period. When you came over, obviously you had a partner, and he obviously had a network and a circle of friends. How did you find finding your feet in Australia?
It's really interesting because I have another friend who's also South African and married to an Aussie, but she's Afrikaans, and we've actually had quite a different journey. And I think that because I'm English South African, there were a lot of similarities, and it did feel like it was relatively easy to settle in. I mean, there are differences, and I think sometimes you just think you're settling in, and then something will happen or someone will say something, and you kind of realize how foreign you are. And that can be quite unsettling when you feel like you're finding your feet, and then someone will say something and you either don't get the reference, or you realize that you have a very different perspective on an issue to them. But I did find that my Afrikaans friend has struggled at times because she doesn't even have anyone to speak Afrikaans to, and that's really hard for her. So when we get together, even though I'm terrible at Afrikaans, I speak as much of it as I can to her, just so she feels like she's at home.
Well, we should do our next interview in Afrikaans then, because I'm Afrikaans speaking, and then that would be interesting.
Hilarious at how terrible I am at Afrikaans. But I did sing Most Lucky to her, and she was very happy.
Oh, well done. That is very impressive. And it's quite funny how a South African would come to Australia to come and learn Afrikaans.
Yeah, well, I think, I probably have spoken more Afrikaans here than I did in the last few years of my life in South Africa. But yeah, that's funny.
So, Candice, you have a very interesting career. Well, it is your career, isn't it? It's not just a side gig. I just need to get this right. Your stage production that you do.
So actually, well, yes, good question. So it was my career in South Africa. I was a professional actress and voice artist, but I haven't actually been able to make it my career here. And that's been probably the biggest adjustment for me here, to be honest. I got an agent, but I just haven't quite managed to break in to the arts here in the same way. So I've had to take this kind of weird side journey where I've been doing a lot of independent stuff. So I've been writing my own shows, and I'm part of an improv group. And I've been basically doing my own shows at Melbourne Comedy Festival and Melbourne Fringe. And so that's how you found out about me, because I was doing a show at Melbourne Fringe. So it's kind of this weird side hustle, because I also work at a museum in Melbourne, which is fantastic because it's a museum of the moving image. And it's also really speaks to a lot of my interests: film, TV, movies, animation, video games, etc. And it's a really amazing place to work. So I'm actually quite lucky that I have this extremely cool job and I get to do my passion on the side.
That is amazing. Wow. Yeah, you're living your dream.
Yeah, it is quite amazing because the show that I did at Fringe now is the second time I've done it, or the third actually. So I put it up for Comedy Festival at the beginning of the year, and then I took it to Sydney Fringe, and then I did it for Melbourne Fringe, and it was a very personal show about my life growing up in South Africa and moving to Australia. And it was amazing. It went really well, and it feels like it's a really nice stepping stone, and that some more interesting stuff's going to come from it. So that's very exciting.
Now you got to give us more information. You got to give us more. Please tell us about your journey. Give us maybe like a short summary, if you're okay with sharing a bit of what the production is about, that you did for Fringe. And then also, before you do that, please explain to our viewers what Fringe is, because I know, because I'm now Aussie, but our viewers in South Africa wouldn't know.
Well, it's really similar to the Grahamstown Festival. If you think about if you've ever been to the Grahamstown Festival. So I went to the Grahamstown Festival a lot in South Africa and put a lot of shows on there. And it's very similar in that, anyone can do a show. All you have to do is pay the registration fee. And then you have to, make sure that it's good enough for people to want to come and watch it. But yeah, the comedy festival is much bigger and sort of really well promoted in Australia. So a lot of people know about the comedy festival, but then the Fringe is kind of more an opportunity for you to do maybe a bit more edgy stuff or experimental or dealing with ideas that are maybe a bit more challenging, and not so mainstream. So, and
like migration.
Yeah, exactly. Like migration. Yes.
So give us that. Where did you grow up? Yes, please. What is it all about?
Is that I grew up very, very white and English. And then I actually ended up having my daughter with an Indian man. So I was in a mixed relationship and I have a mixed race child. And so the show talks about the sort of challenges of that and, family and everyone's perception of whether or not that was a good idea. And then how moving to Australia actually made me much more aware of my daughter's race, because Australia is actually quite a racist place. And I don't think they like to think of themselves that way. But my daughter and I encountered quite a few issues here where I was always very well accepted and then she wasn't, and not in the same situations, but like in her school, for example, she had a lot of problems. And so the show, it's a comedy, surprisingly, but it is really dealing with, coming to terms with the beliefs that you've been kind of embedded with growing up, and then getting to a point where you start challenging those beliefs, and then how those beliefs got challenged again moving to Australia, and the sort of being away from South Africa gave me a bit of perspective around that as well. So yeah, but it is a comedy.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I can already imagine how you could add some humor to it. So yes, no, I think it would be fabulous. I'm definitely. Are we able to watch it? Not in person. Like, is it filmed?
I filmed it, but you know what? I'm of the opinion that filmed theatre, unless it's filmed in a very particular way, always loses something, unfortunately. Yeah. And so I would rather people saw it in person. And
Are you coming to the Gold Coast?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't have plans to as yet, but you never know. You never know.
We've got some fabulous options here in Brisbane area, and
yes.
There's lots of South Africans. Well, and I'm sure. Do you know what the kind of makeup is of the crowds that come to watch your story, your migration story?
Well, I really heavily promoted it to the South African community, but I think the real joy in the audience was that there was always a mix. So the beginning of the show is really about South Africa, and I sing this stupid song about South African slang, and it's really funny, and the South Africans love it. And then it's interesting how, you know, you sort of feel the shifts as we move into Australia, and I start talking about my experiences of living in Australia. And I met so many lovely South Africans afterwards who said that they really felt like I had captured the immigration part and moving to Australia really accurately, and that they had felt quite seen listening to my story and realizing that, you know, they weren't the only ones who had gone through some of that stuff.
That's amazing. And that's what we're trying to do with these interviews as well, is to get that kind of sense that, hey, I'm not the only one. There are other people going through the same who have experienced the same kind of anxiety or fear or happiness. You just, you know, all the emotions, because as you know, migration encompasses every emotion of things that exist.
It really does. And it's so interesting because a lot of, I've had moments over the time that I've lived here where I've actually been really grateful that I have an Australian partner, because I do think that had made a lot of the journey much easier for me. And I do think that it's much harder for people who come over already married with kids, and they have to try and make connections, get jobs, you know, meet friends. It's because that's really hard. And I found it hard even with someone who was a point of access to a lot of people already, you know. And I think the change for me came, though, when I was able to start interacting with those people in my own right without needing my partner there. You know, that was when I started to feel much more at home, and that I wasn't just, you know, his partner, but that I was actually forging those friendships in my own right. But that took a long time, actually.
So your best friend here in Australia is Afrikaans, is that right?
Well, she's one of my friends. Unfortunately, we don't live super close to each other, but we used to know each other in Cape Town, which is just weird.
Oh, okay.
We both now live here, but yes.
And then I'm sure Facebook reconnected you, because that's usually the route that people find. Hey, my long lost friend now also lives in the same place that I'm moving to in Australia.
Yeah, it's so true. And for some reason, recently I've had so many people contacting me on social media from South Africa saying, oh, I've got a friend moving to Melbourne. I'd love you to meet them. Or, you know, I'm thinking of coming. Do you have any tips? It's almost like it's suddenly really ramped up for some reason. I don't know if you've been finding that, but it seems
yes, because COVID has exacerbated some concerns. And of course, there are some power failures. I've actually heard a few funny ways of people referring to Eskom's beurtkrag, goodness, what's it in English now? Load shedding.
Load shedding, yes.
And they call it load
load
shipping. Load shipping. And I thought, well, that's a very funny one. Yes, I can imagine that you must feel like that. And one of the questions that I asked some of my community, South African community, recently was, what is one of the first things that they will do when they come to Australia? And somebody responded by saying they will delete Eskom's load shedding app immediately. I didn't even know that there's an app, apparently. No, and I'm like, or the push notifications or something like that. I'm like, oh, wow. It's just on another level, things that you and I don't have to deal with. My electricity is on, and I'm not even concerned that it's going to go away, because in the 17, almost 18 years that I've lived in Australia, I think I've lived through 2 power cuts, and that was like maximum 30 minutes or an hour, and that's when something blew up down the road, and they come and they fix it, and there you go.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so tell me a little bit as well about your daughter and how she has settled in. Now, I know you mentioned that she found it perhaps different to what you might have expected it would be to come to Australia. And how old is she?
So she was 15. She's 22 now. I had her when I was very young. But, I think that it was also difficult because she was 15. I think that's a very difficult age to come over. High school, what was it, year 10? Yeah. So that's really, it was challenging. We got her into a really great school. Well, I thought it was very progressive. They had lots of really interesting subjects and, no uniform. It seemed very cool. But yeah, I mean, there were some problems. The great thing actually now is that she's out of school and she's been able to move. She moved out of home. She's living in the CBD of Melbourne, in the city, where it's really multicultural. She feels much more at home there, and she's much more settled now. But it did take a long time, I must say. That was by far the hardest part of the move, was her and getting her settled, definitely.
So do you think she sees herself as Australian now or still South African?
I think still South African. And she's gone back to South Africa a lot more than I have, because she's got a lot of, obviously her dad's and his side of the family are all still there. And I have a much smaller family and haven't had the opportunity to travel back as much. But yeah, she's gone back a lot more. And I think she definitely feels very connected to South Africa. But she's starting to understand and appreciate the perks of living here, obviously. And so I think, it's a lot more even for her. It's not quite so difficult anymore. Yeah.
Is she studying or just working?
She's just working at the moment. She actually started studying the year COVID hit, yes, so February.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, beginning of March 2020. And, when they all went online with everything, she just said, this isn't what I wanted. I wanted the university experience, and I don't want to be sitting in my bedroom. So she dropped out, and she'll probably go back, next year or the year after. But she's working now and she's traveling. In fact, at the moment, she's in Europe. She's having the time of her life. So, yeah, she's
very nice. I do very well remember the days pre-kids.
Yes, I know, how exciting.
Yeah, very easy to move around and just go and travel, and all the money that you earn, even though you might not earn as much, you have a small mortgage or a small rent to pay, and anyway, there's beauty in having children too, of course. Sometimes I just reminisce about it sometimes, like, oh yeah, I remember those days, and then I think, well, I'm very glad that I'm at the stage that I'm at now, and I don't still have to start with the family because I've already progressed quite significantly. So I'm now looking forward to the other end, where it's just going to be, listen to this, I'm hoping that they're going to be serving mum a gin and tonic on a Saturday night. And
that's great. And I promise you will get there. I mean, now my daughter, she doesn't even live here anymore. She's living her own life, and I feel back like I am single again. I mean, obviously I'm married, but we don't have to worry about being at home for dinner or homework, or if it's a school night and we can travel outside of school holidays, all of those joys, so they do come.
Nice. I am jelly. I'm very jelly. I'll get there. Candice, and life in Australia for you as Candace, would you go back to South Africa?
I don't know. I mean, considering that I've now had a taste of the life that we have here, I don't think that I would, but I think that's for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it is really, really hard starting over. And the thought of having to do that again is, I mean, who would want to really? I finally feel that I'm at a point now where I have genuine connections with people. I love my job. I love where we live. And people know who I am. It's wonderful. And to have to give that up and go back would be like starting over again. But also I think you can kind of understand how Australians are sometimes a little bit sort of, I don't want to be mean, but a little bit sheltered in their worldview, because they actually have such an easy life here, and it's quite easy to get used to as well. The no load shedding, the feeling of being safe. And I mean, can I tell you that yesterday I left my phone in a public bathroom, and I thought for about half an hour that it had been stolen, but it actually had been handed in, and I got it back. So,
wow.
And these are the things that, you start to get used to here. And then I think the thought of, then I talked to my mom on the phone and she's telling me about how they still haven't been able to repair any of the damage to KwaZulu-Natal after the floods in April. And then you think, oh, actually, you are really lucky to live here. And would you want to go back? Not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also once you've been out for such a long time, especially if you don't go back regularly, then when you do go back, you see the difference in how things have gone sadly backwards, because that's the way that I experience it every time that I go back. While you're living there, you don't feel it. It's the frog in the hot water syndrome, because you're living and breathing it, and things are just gradually getting worse around you, and you don't realize it until it's too late. But I definitely see it when I go back now. I haven't been back for 4 years now, and the last time I was there, it was a very different country to the what's my maths now? 12, 13 years prior to that.
Yes.
And it's sad. It's really sad for me, and we're not going to get political. That's not the point of this, but it is sad because that's the place I grew up in, and I remember it in a different light. And now I go back and I see a lot of my friends and people there who they're living a life, a nice life in their sheltered areas, in their little cocoons. But then as soon as you step outside of that, you are vulnerable, and you forget your phone in a public toilet and you don't get it back. And you have a daughter who's 22 years old who live in the CBD like you have in Melbourne. I don't think you would sleep at night if you knew that your daughter was living in Joburg CBD, for example.
And that's actually one of the biggest things for me is I often think to myself, I would not be comfortable with my daughter living away from me in South Africa currently, like she went back. We both actually went back to South Africa in February this year. And it was really interesting because her friend, her bestie from, when they were tiny, they were 2, it was so, her mum was so scared of where, and wanted to know where she was at all hours of the day. And this girl, obviously, because she's young, was feeling like, oh, my mother's driving me nuts. But my daughter realized how much independence she'd actually gotten from living here, From when she started school here at 15, she was catching public transport to school on her own, walking to and from the tram to her school, letting me know, oh, I'm going shopping after school with some friends down Sydney Road. I'll be back at, 4:30. And I was like, okay. And that kind of thing, and that she is, as you say, out and about in the CBD till late, clubbing, doing whatever a 22-year-old should be doing. And I am able to sleep at night, which I don't think I would be doing so easily back there.
And Australia as an actress, you touched upon it earlier. You said it's a little bit harder to find your feet. Do you think that it's an accent thing? Do you think it's a humor thing? Maybe this, because the sense of humor is different. You've now been here long enough that you would have obviously learned to appreciate the Australian humor.
Interestingly enough, I think it's a couple of things. I definitely think it's the accent. And I have actually worked on, because I have worked in customer service and customer facing work since I've been living here, I've actually practiced and worked really hard on being able to really neutralize my accent. And I can do that now because I've just been practicing. And so I think that if people know I'm South African, they can hear it. But I think if they don't know, they may not pick it up. But I also think that the industry here is much smaller work-wise, but there's a lot more people in the industry. So, because of the standard of living and the sort of the government subsidies of universities and that kind of thing, there's a lot of people who have studied acting and drama who are competing for actually a much smaller pool of roles. Whereas when I was living in Cape Town, we used to do so much international work, the international film crews would come down and shoot, cheaper films and ads and all kinds of things. And there were less of us and there was more work. So it felt like everyone got a chance and everyone always had work. Whereas here, there's a lot less Australian TV being made here. They don't really make international stuff, and so the competition is just really stiff, and there's not enough. But it's interesting because it's really forced me to sort of rethink myself as a creative, which at times has been a bit depressing. You know, I really enjoyed the work that I was doing in Cape Town back then, but actually at the moment I'm now in the process of applying to do my master's in theatre writing, and you know, I'm sort of pivoting towards more writing and creating my own work, which I actually wouldn't have done if I'd stayed in Cape Town. So I suppose that's the silver lining, really, is that I've started to work much harder on being a creative, as opposed to just being like, I'm always working, so I don't have to really try too hard to move out of my
Yes. It's good to be pushed out of your comfort zone, I think, because you learn more about yourself and you learn new skills, and it just enriches your life in the end. My personal feeling.
I never thought about going and studying my master's. I wouldn't have done it, you know, and then here I am. I actually just put in my application today, so we'll see what happens.
Congrats. Through which uni are you going?
Melbourne Uni, VCA. We'll see.
Very nice.
Accepted. I just put in an application, so we'll see what happens.
Very well done. Yeah. Oh, you'll do great, because if you absolutely, I have no doubt. I have done that before. So I have studied extensively, and I've worked at universities as well. It's easy to tell when somebody will make a success of their studies, I believe, because you can tell the passion, and you can tell just the way that they speak about it and the way you approach things generally. We're older, which we think about it different. You wouldn't do it if you weren't interested. And if you're interested in something, you approach it differently. You approach it with passion and with like a keen eye. So you most often only have to read something once and you remember it because you actually want to know what it says. Whereas back in the day when you went to school and somebody forced you to sit in the seat and say, you got to like study this paragraph now, you're like, No. 1 ear in, 1 ear out. Well, that's how I think it was for me.
Yeah, it's probably like that for me too. Too many distractions when you're young.
Yes, absolutely. Mine involved everything except studying. But it's okay. I made up for it when I left school, when like long after school. Once I had my big party days at University of Pretoria, and then I came to Australia, I then became serious about studying. So yeah, I maybe if I studied harder in the beginning, I would have had no. I'm glad I did all the planning.
We get where we need to be, I think, eventually.
Yes, you need to live your life. It's like your daughter at this moment, as you mentioned, she's doing out what a 20-year-old should be doing, which is like having fun.
Exactly.
And tell me a little bit about your partner and having two South Africans in the house. Has he picked up any Afrikaans yet? Are you cooking South African food for him, or how does that work?
I'm actually a pescatarian, so I don't eat, most of the South Afrikaanse food, but he loves braaiing. And so we've actually bought like a proper charcoal braai, which, as you know, is highly unusual here in Australia because they like cooking on gas. And I was like, that is not acceptable. I'm sorry. We're going charcoal route at all.
You put your fish on the one side and he's got his steak.
Exactly. My fish and my mushrooms, and he's got his piece on the other side. So he has taken great pride in getting his braai master skills up, and we've gone and bought boerewors from the South African shops, which he loves, and he loves biltong, and of course Aldi. I don't know if you have this in Brizzy, I'm sure you would, but Aldi regularly have South African products, and he is a lover of Omar rusks. He loves them. So.
Me too.
So whenever Aldi stocks the rusks, he comes home with, armfuls of them. There's definitely some stuff that he really likes, which is funny. And he also he's getting really good at the sort of South African accent as well, which makes me laugh.
It's so funny because I don't even hear the Australian accent anymore.
Yes.
I know when you just come over the first, like it's just, you're just like, oh, that person sounds weird. It's just all the time. And now it's like, I don't hear it. Now I hear South African accents or I hear other accents, but I don't hear the Australian accent. You just sound normal to me if you're Australian because that's all you hear all the time.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, Candice, it has been so fabulous to get to know you and have a chat. Please tell us where can our viewers find out more about Candice? Do you have a website that you can refer them to, or
I don't have a website, but I'm on Instagram at Candice D'Arcy. I think it's D.ARCY. And I post about all the shows that I'm doing and stuff on there. So that's probably the best way to find out what I'm doing. We do regular shows at the Butterfly Club in Melbourne, improv shows, and then I guest in other people's shows and, obviously do my own as well. So that's a good place to follow me.
Lovely. It's been fabulous to chat to you. Thank you so much for sharing with us your journey, and for everybody else. If you live in Melbourne, you have no excuse for not going to watch Candice's show, all right? I'm jelly because I don't live in Melbourne. I wish I could go, and I wish I could see it otherwise. So I might have to just fly to Melbourne soon and come and watch it.
It's true. Maybe you will. But yes, thank you so much for having me. It was really fun chatting.
Oh, thank you so much, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for watching today's episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you will come and join us inside Migration Made Easy, which is going to close its doors pretty soon in the next few days. So if you want to make sure that you are in with the most comprehensive program where we help you plan, apply for, and make the move to Australia without struggling to know where to start or if you even qualify, and we make you go from a zero to a migration hero, hop onto chamonixtv.com.au/now in capital letters, the now, and you will get all the information that you need on how you can join us. Make sure, as I said, you do that within the next few days because doors will be closing very soon. Thanks for watching today's episode and for coming back every week. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you will hit the subscribe button so that you are notified when our next episode is released. All right, my friend, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
All right, so thank you so much for joining me today. If you had fun, please remember to hit that subscribe button and then it'll make sure that you never miss a thing. I'll see you same time and same place next week. Bye for now.